Hello and welcome to the NewWorldReview, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we are descending deep down into the nation of Curseland once more in order to examine the hidden inventory arc of Jujutsu Kaisen. And before I go any further, I know for a fact now that what we're about to go through, as well as everything from here on out, is going to be a spoiler for anime-only watchers. So there's your warning, continue to view at your own risk, but also seriously, just go and read the manga. I don't care how good the anime is, so far Jujutsu Kaisen has been one of my favorite manga experiences of the last decade, so just do it, you. Oh, and just while we're here, this is an impassioned plea from my used and abused DMs on social media. Yes, I am well aware that the Jujutsu Kaisen prequel exists. I have been aware since the very first video I made, but I was told to read it very specifically after Hidden Inventory, so we will be tackling that next. So thank you to the potentially hundreds of you who have been trying to maneuver my attention that way, but I'm well aware, so you can now rest easy. Although I suppose it's only fair that I get bombarded with the same request over and over and over again, just as I will proceed to bombard you with the wonderful opportunity to subscribe to the NewWorldReview. The pressing of this button being a domain for regular Jujutsu Kaisen content being uploaded straight into your YouTube feed. And since this is a domain, I'm afraid that this request is a guaranteed hit. So look, it's your fault for getting trapped. Now just push the button and be merry. But stepping into Hidden Inventory was a bit of a shock because we were immediately thrust into a Gojo-centric flashback. So a shock in all of the best possible ways. And as such, not only do we get to learn a whole lot more about this aloof figure, but the true stars of this story are Geto, who we are finally getting into, as well as Toji, the mysterious fatherman of one Fushiguro. That and all of the world building in regards to Tengen, who is a fascinating figure, all in good time though. Because we are going to begin in the only place I know how. I suspect that in an alternate reality, we could have had a version of Jujutsu Kaisen that just featured Gojo as the straight up protagonist. Because this whole arc was about 15 or so chapters without seeing Yuji, and everything was, honestly, it was pretty fine. Gojo very comfortably held up that mantle in Yuji's stead, and it was fun to watch him develop into the Gojo we know today. Because as flippant and arguably reckless as Gojo is in the modern day, his student years were certainly much worse, asking all sorts of questions like, curtains even necessary? Does it even matter if regular people see all this weird crap? As well as the whole idea of how painful it is to look out for the weak, so he certainly had a more simplistic view of the world, almost optimistic really, only truly developing his revolutionary mentality towards the end of the arc. And while it wasn't much, there was some information given regarding Gojo's specific curse techniques named Limitless and Six Eyes, the combination of which are apparently what makes Gojo the ridiculous curse boss he is, although Six Eyes in particular wasn't expanded on and as a result intrigues me greatly. What we did get to do though was a deep dive into Limitless with all of the neutral blues, reds, and purple business, which was great because we've seen Gojo use these curse techniques in the past, but knowing how they operate is always what I crave. And intriguingly, this also delves further into reversed cursed energy, which to put more simply can be called positive energy, which is apparently achieved through a simple yet impractical mathematical equation of negative times negative equals positive, which is an idea that I think I sort of feared at the beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen. I really like that this world dealt exclusively with negative energy, and theoretically, to become more powerful, you would just need to invoke more and more negativity, so higher risk for higher reward. But at the very least, I do like that, right now anyway, positive energy cannot be achieved on its own. It needs to be summoned directly from the negative. And that concept in and of itself really does suit Gojo, who seems to have chosen the path of embracing negative energy to change the world around him. As opposed to, say, Geto, who comes to the conclusion that we should just stop curses and negative energy manifesting in the first place. How, you ask? Well, mass genocide, of course, but I do like that contrast. Getting into Geto, I got quite a legitimate shock when I saw him pop up as a student so damn casually. I mean, I know it's been implied or perhaps even outright stated that he was a former Jujutsu student. I honestly don't remember, but seeing his familiar smiley face was the exact moment where I sat up and went, right, we're in for a bit of a story here. Because this does serve as the villainous origin story of Geto, which is perfectly contrasted against Gojo. Because as much as they may disagree about the basics, these two were very much on the same page for quite some time. And the prime example I would cite of that is that they both came to the conclusion that they would let Riko choose whether or not she wanted to merge with Tengen. So both displaying this rebellious, yet merciful and compassionate nature. And quite honestly, it's a bit of a jarring shift with Geto, one that I'm not 100% sure I buy. Like, it takes an awful lot to transform someone from the paragon of humanity, determined to protect the weak and all of the good things, to decide that killing a large majority of humans on the planet is the ultimate solution. Although I will admit that it was quite disturbing to see all of those religious cultists applauding the death of an innocent young girl, and deal with the death of a first-year student, and then stumble into the village where all of the people wanted to kill the curse-wielding little girls. So you know what? Sure. It's the more selfish, self-preservation path where Geto would rather sacrifice the bulk of humanity humanity to protect sorcerers, rather than sacrificing sorcerers to protect the rest of the ungrateful swine on this planet. And I don't know, it's hard to grapple with because these specific experiences Geto has undergone do point to this darker and perhaps even unsalvageable aspect of humans. So I mean, why bother protecting them if they are the sole cause of everything that's wrong in the first place? And you know, the more I talk about it, the more I'm actually convincing myself of Geto's motivations. So even writing this out is a bit of a journey. But still, let's say that Geto is on the right track. You would still need to rid the world of humans pretty much all at once, otherwise you're just perpetuating negative energy, because the surviving family and friends and just other people will fester into these gigantic negative energy batteries like Junpei. And that's to say nothing of the people who are both not sorcerers and also don't output much negative energy, like Bread Girl in Nanami's flashback. I mean, why would we kill Bread Girl? She is amazing and she makes us delicious, delicious bread. Or Yuji's classmate Yuko, or Junpei's mother, Fushiguro's sister, Yuji's grandfather, all of these people who have a net positive effect on the world. Anyway, we've probably spoken about this a bit too much. I do like that I kind of understand where Geto is coming from now, even if I do think his ultimate ideology is simplistic and just a little poorly thought out, and rather twistedly, he's very much become like the cultist he so despised. But we do need to get into our third star player, a very unexpected presence from Toji Fushiguro. When he was first brought up, I thought it would be for some sort of eventual conflict between he and Megumi, but I think he was pretty perfectly dealt with here. He at once represents the great potential of humanity going forward, as well as the profound danger. He does the former by being apparently the only successful case of a human's cursed energy being reduced to absolute zero via a fun, heavenly restriction. So that's quite handy and perhaps a potential path forward to rid the world of negative energy, although perhaps even more wildly impractical than even Geto's solution. But that's really what made Toji so fascinating, because he presented us with the antithesis of Jujutsu sorcery, someone who was able to completely counter those forces without a single drop of his own cursed energy. And it really does highlight the fact that Jujutsu sorcerers and curse wielders in general may be far too over-reliant on that energy and not at all prepared for the more basic of human challenges, which is something that we have seen portrayed through both Yuji and Maki with their raw strength and speed. But here we saw a tip-top sorcerer fall victim in Gojo, which was pretty amazing. For the very first time in Jujutsu Kaisen, we have confirmed that Gojo is indeed mortal. No matter how ridiculous his sorcery is, he can still be brought down by the right level of planning, which I imagine is going to be an important factor in going forward with the whole plot to seal Gojo's shenaniganry. Back to Toji though, I really liked his whole gimmick of facing off against curse users by wielding a spirit that not only holds all of the funky weapons, but even Om Nom Noms itself. It was a really cool idea, and I'm kind of sad that Toji did meet his demise here, if only because I wanted to see more of that spirit in use. All in all though, Toji did serve as a very solid antagonist. I would even go so far as to say that he has the best antagonist arc to date. Although to be fair, I suppose he doesn't have a whole lot of competition because Mahito and Geto still haven't played out their full stories, but Toji Fushiguro is a presence that I will always remember. Now, speaking of presences, we have heard the name Tengen brought up before, and it has happened again. He was mentioned during the Death Painting arc, but has become phenomenally more intriguing during this one, wielding the cursed technique of immortality, albeit immortality that does not prevent aging. So once every 500 years, he has to merge with an appropriate vessel, which is our primary conflict in this arc. Although come to think of it, in the end, that was more or less pointless. After that entire struggle with Riko, Tengen somehow stabilizes anyway, assumedly through finding another vessel, maybe, I don't know, it's not explained. All I know is it's really sad because ultimately Riko's involvement and death served zero purpose here whatsoever. They could have just left her alone to live out a happy normal life. Because in the end, her death wouldn't even satisfy the weird cultist dudes because Tengen just would have become quote unquote impure by another means. So maybe the sheer pointlessness of that struggle also plays into Geto's motivation to stop this cycle of cursed energy. I do very much like the concept of Tengen though, particularly because he is currently unseen, and to be honest, I kind of hope that we never see him. There is something so powerful about this image consisting exclusively of words of this immortal protector, something that I don't think visual art could ever satisfy. It's sort of like the idea of the Lovecraftian cosmic entities, Cthulhu and such. They were written deliberately to be beyond human comprehension and therefore beyond artistic depiction. And so every time you do see a picture of like an eldritch horror, they're kind of underwhelming. And while it's not quite on the same level, at this stage Tengen is such a wonderfully mysterious entity honesty that I don't think actually seeing him could really ever live up to that. Oh, and I should also mention that Gojo's explanation of how Tengen operates was pretty perfectly spot on. As someone who grew up watching Digimon, the idea that we like Metal Greymon, but don't want him to become Skull Greymon, so yeah, it's better to just reset him back to Koromon, made this situation ridiculously clear. If possible, I would prefer Digimon analogies for all arcs, please. Now, funnily enough, this is a bit of a strange arc that actually seems to blend into the next one, because the final chapter of the arc spent about half of its time wrapping up Gojo's past, and the other half brazenly marching forward into our next adventure, which commences with the discovery of the filthy mole, which turns out to be a mecha mole. But the most intriguing part about this is definitely the further discussion about binding vows, because it is very intriguing that even Mahito was ultimately unwilling to break said binding vow due to the completely unknown penalties, which is fair enough considering that even Sukuna seems to regard these vows as some pretty serious business, but that makes me want to see someone break one all the more. And as we conclude with the setup of a newly reinvigorated Mechamaru about to face off against Mahito, I do wonder if this will affect his heavenly restriction in any way, because it's not really a restriction anymore if the restriction part doesn't exist, so will his power be affected as well, or is Mahito just a glorified cheat the system sort of existence with his soul manipulating prowess? I'm afraid I don't have the answers to this currently, so I should probably go and find out. So that pretty much does it for this blind review of Jujutsu Kaisen's hidden inventory arc, and what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below, or even join my Discord server, and if you're keen for some more Jujutsu sorcery, then please do check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for very maybe regular Jujutsu Kaisen morbidity delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.